So tonight, one of those massive games in the Northeast. Newcastle United against Danny's Liverpool. Eagerly await this one. What are we going to see? What kind of Newcastle United are going to show up for this one? Eddie Howe has been speaking about this and speaking about what he sees in his squad at this particular time.
Freshness is important in a squad. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. I think there needs to be a certain element of trading in and out to keep the group dynamic, new, because a new dynamic and a new team always has to form, I think, every season. I think sometimes the same squad can produce a staleness, can produce a negative product. So I think we're aware of that. But it's all what we're able to do, rather than our want. Our want is clear, but it's what we're able to do, I think, is the key thing. Of course, there was a want from us to do so, especially in the summer, where we saw that was a couple of players that we felt could have made a difference in different positions. But yeah, it didn't happen. And the other side is we lost. Although we'd never had Yankuba Minte, we lost with him and Elliott, two key players for us. So it's not just the lack of incomings, it's losing two talented young guys as well. So, but that goes with the territory, and we just have to adapt to make the best of the situation. And I still believe in the squad we have. The squad we have is a very good squad. It's our job to do better with it.
Funnily enough, Danny, one of the players you'd like to have brought in was Mark Gahey, and that did not happen. What kind of a difference he would have made to them, we can only guess. But at Newcastle, what do you see on this potential squad staleness, Danny? Is there a staleness around the place? Have you played in conditions whereby the squad you were in, the team you were in, have become that bit stale?
Not really, no. I agree with him. I think there's always a benefit to bringing some new bodies through the door because it gives you a nudge. I remember at Liverpool a time when we were signing players left, right and centre, and I was thinking, oh, good God. Especially players in similar positions, and you just have to kick on. And when you get a bit... I've said it a million times, but I think it's the perfect words. Players can quickly fall into a comfort zone. And Gerard Houllier, I respect so much, he used to be on at me all the time. Don't get in that comfort zone. Don't think you're better just because you've had a good season, just because you've had a good week. And when you did, he'd hammer you. You'd come on, you'd get left out.
Yeah.
And I think Newcastle, they've had a few injuries, which creates problems because you have to rely on the same players a lot. But he's right. I think some of those Newcastle players' performances have been too inconsistent. How do you go from beating Arsenal at home, Spurs at home, getting a draw to City at home, to losing against West Ham, to losing at home to Brighton, to losing away at wherever,
Yeah. It doesn't make sense, does it?
No, because they've shown a better level, Newcastle. In that year they got in the Champions League, they had this really consistent, relentless performance level, which they haven't been able to recapture. So I think Eddie's actually spot on. I think he does need some movement just to give those in there a little nudge and go, you might be well thought of and you might have a good contract, but actually...
Yeah.
We see it at Chelsea now.
What baffles me though, Danny, you get players there that can score goals, but they're not scoring goals.
I did a piece on them actually at Palace. They had one shot in the game. With the talent they had on the pitch is not good enough, and they are getting in good positions at the moment. Their decision making and that little bit of quality in the final third's not there, but there's no doubt they're capable, and that's why Liverpool have to be careful tonight, because that same Newcastle that beat Tottenham and beat Arsenal and drew with Man City, is there. So they've got to be bang at it, Liverpool, tonight.
But Simon, you would argue that because of the rules and regulations, their hands are tied in terms of who they can acquire and who they could bring in.
Well, they are, aren't they? And this is the flip side of the PSR argument and the whole governance of the Premier League, a league that has worked brilliantly, become the most investable football league in domestic football around the world. The envy of every other league is now regulating itself and suggesting that no one else can come along and build a football club that can compete with the guys that are already there. Because Newcastle, whilst I do think there has to be order, and I don't think it should just be the wild, wild west, and maybe there should be some specific controls around salary capping that the unions should just shut up and get on with because their players are already getting embarrassment of riches in the first place. And then you've got the opportunity to perhaps wage cap but still build underneath it by buying better players and balancing your squads in a different way, by having the investability to buy in transfer fees rather than just wages. Look, the bottom line is I don't see how Newcastle can ever get to the level of Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City, whose turnovers are north of 500 million quid, when Newcastle's is sub 300 million quid. How do they get that other 200 million quid Where does it come from? It can only come from achievement on the field. How do they get achievement on the field? They buy players. How can they buy players if they're going to have to sell players to buy players in the first place or balance the books?
So what's Eddie got to do, Simon? Make the current players better players?
Of course he's got to do that. Probably hold the water for 18 months and take over from Thomas Tuchel.
Does it become less appealing for investors then moving forward, Simon? You know, you say about the Premier League being the better, it is.
No, what it does, what it will do, is inevitably drive the inevitable outcome of a European Super League.
Okay.
That's what it'll do.
You saved that one to the last.
Wait and
that
see.
was kind of kapow.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.